Just a quick video demonstrating the infinity buildings don't really matter, nor do most of the trophies, and heavily doesn't even work. So we'll keep Gory Trophy, Smoldering Trophy in the 6+5 stat buildings, and then dismantle everything. So all the infinity buildings, and all the trophies besides those. And then we'll just pick some characters. Alright, and the hardest stage we have. Alright. We don't want that. We might want that later. There's hemorrhage. And there's maggot. Perfect. So basically, as long as you survive up to the first mini boss, you win. And the best buildings to do that are Gory and Smoldering Trophy. They're a majority of the damage. If you're playing Sisyphus, you of course need Snowy Trophy. But if you're not, it doesn't really matter. There's maggot. Might get hit. Ow. But, alright. We could take Cloak there. That would have also been good. Generally, you don't need to grind levels either. Like, the level 82 is just from clearing for trophy bonus. Cohabitants, I tried some stuff with speedrunning, so it's a bit higher, but it doesn't matter much. That's good. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I probably don't even need to level, but just demonstrating something. Don't need that. We don't need a second broodmother. Wind is good if we can merge that with cell. Oh, that's good for pass through. But yeah, basically, the buildings increase in cost. They double at certain breakpoints, roughly every 5th or 6th level, and the last one being 31. So if you want the cheapest upgrades, up to 31 every stat equally is like the best value for money. But of course, some stats are way better than others. Like strength is pretty useless. Then we want iron here. Oh, true cloak. Perfect. But just doing your Smoldering and Gory trophy will clear everything. Desert can eventually be useful, but since crit is additive, it's not multiplicative 2x damage, it's additive with like cloak. It's less good than you might expect. I wanted Warhorn level, there we go. It's also additive with like upturn touch it. There are some sources of multiplicative damage, like radiation, but on the flip side, certain things like Frostburn from Frozen Flame are also additive. And crit is multiplicative with itself, so you can't really stack 100% crit, and eventually the crit passes become useless. Due to Desert Trophy. Does anything really matter? Probably not. Alright, and then showing our stats, yeah, without the infinities are pretty low. Levels also, you get like roughly 3 points until level 15, and then roughly 2 points until level 30. And then from 30 to 70, or 30 to 100 is 1 point each, and 100 is the cap. And you can see, yeah, everything is pretty low, but a lot of stats have linear scaling, like endurance, strength, intelligence, where you always get the same value per point, but leadership has diminishing returns. So, like, my highest leadership when I have the buildings is like 101 with tactician, which is 55 baby balls. And so for 43 leadership, we get 42, and we only get 13 extra baby balls for pumping our leadership up 60 points almost, which is only like a 20% damage increase. Yeah. And as you can see, pretty much everything comes from baby balls later on. And as long as you can clear to the first mini boss, you always win, or should always win. For Sisyphus, instead of having these two trophies, Smoldering and Gory, for clearing stage 5 and stage 6, Gory Grasslands and Smoldering Depths, you'd want Snowy Trophy, and that's the main reason. Is if we go here, Sisyphus later on in Ninja is really terrible unless you have this passive, because this scales with AoE damage, but or AoE power, but it's not reflected in the tooltip. And Heavenly Trophy is bugged, or it doesn't work. Alright, and then to explain some of the scaling of NG+, basically what this chart is how much you're getting from each trophy at each NG+. And here is a level 31 buildings plus 100 cogitator, what you would get from each of those stats. And this is what you would get from the trophy bonus at each NG. And so what I did here, if we look at the formulas, this basically sees how much damage you would be doing from that source, assuming you completed all base game on Fast 9, and you had a level 31 buildings and 100 cogitator at that point. Realistically, you'll level some and get the building some, but it doesn't change much. You'll eventually reach this point. And then comparing how much you continue to gain from the trophies versus how much you were doing. So basically, how hard your baby balls are hitting relative to the increase in enemy HP. And if we go over here, it's kind of complicated. Basically, there's two different formulas for New Game Plus and Base Game. So we can't really compare base game to New Game Plus, but each New Game Plus level, if we simplify it, is basically you just multiply by the New Game Plus number, and that's how much extra HP they have. There's some extra things, like if you get additional field clears or certain other conditions, the game has like increasing difficulty mechanic that scales the HP and reduces the damage you deal. It's applied both in the damage calculation and when the pieces are spawned, how much HP they have. But it doesn't change the math, like that's always applicable. It's just, it makes some things worse, like Flash Black Hole. And then in terms of how much damage you're taking, it's slightly different in that basically it's additive with the Fast Plus difficulty, so it's more like 3 plus NG plus level, and I have a formula for that too. But yeah, just so you can see the formulas, we're comparing the relative stat increase of like how much the baby ball damage is, and then for baby ball damage we're multiplying by crit. Of course, crit caps at 100, and like we explained earlier, crit's additive, so in practice it might be slightly worse once you have additional passives, but Um, as we mentioned, we only really care about clearing to the first mini boss. At that point, you can set up some OP combo that will just clear the stage regardless of NG. And special balls hit damage is very similar. This one, basically, there's that arbitrary 1.7 number. To explain, Void Trophy only applies to additively after the base damage from strength is multiplied by the level of the ball, which for a level 3 baseball in most cases is 1.7, or it's 1.65 min to 1.75 max damage. So this is roughly what it works out to. In practice, it's actually worse than this because you're going to evolve your balls and fuse them and things like that, which will increase that multiplication on strength, but not do anything to the Void Trophy damage. So Void Trophy's kind of bad. Glacier scales with AoE power and status effect power, but not on Switch version, so we'll look at Switch version later. And then status effects, yeah, they kind of fall off because they don't scale with speed. And then AoE and Wretched Onion we can group together since they scale the same way. And then Hemorrhage, because the percentage of the health, it scales not at all if you're not factoring in speed. Like Hemorrhage Sun will always clear in the same amount of time, or Hemorrhage Flicker, because neither of those are affected by speed. And then passives, as we mentioned, there's a Heavenly Trophy bug, so you can't really scale them, and they just fall off. So here we can see the chart. Let me make it a tiny bit smaller so it's not cut off. We can add some additional rows, but basically you can see it gets harder to a point, roughly right around NG5, and then it starts getting easier again. If we expand the range, like where I'm personally at would be closer to this. And we can see also baby ball damage. It again starts trending upwards at a certain point due to crit. And the rate at which status damage and AoE damage is falling off drops down as well. So Sisyphus is bad, but like 1/5 of your normal damage compared to what you're doing when you started in G plus is like still very doable. It's not impossible to win with Sisyphus, and you still have Glacier. And then if we go to, I think the highest person is like NG 69 or 70. If we extrapolate it out here, you see there's some other trends. Basically, you'll reach the crit cap, and then baby ball damage starts decreasing at a very, very tiny rate again. But basically, these are roughly flatlined, like they're not changing much. And then if we go way out here, yeah, it's basically perfectly flat. So you can still clear any NG. What will be harder, though, is basically this. The number of hits you can live. This is not relative power, so ignore the title. HP does not scale very well, like Shroom Trophy is not very good. So you're pretty much always going down. And this is only like a single enemy hitting you, because that's the easiest calculation. Some projectiles hit less than that. And some boss attacks or stacks of enemies hit more, so you might get truly one-shotted. But essentially you can't take very many hits. And some characters also have less HP than Cogitator, like Physicist or Repentant. And some have more, like Shield Bearer. But essentially your damage keeps up pretty well. And the damage you take just always goes up, but eventually sort of flatlines to where it's not impossible. Like, I guess if I extended this like NG plus 1000, maybe, but realistically the highest person is like around 70, and most people are going to stop playing way before then. And you're not going to really get hit much anyways. Since it's easy to get tons of damage in this game, as long as you can clear the first mini boss. And you can use one death, you can run up the stage and die to clear all the enemies up to where you are on the screen and get a fuser, and then stop taking damage from that point. And then we'll add a bunch more things and remove this. Okay. So what we're adding in here is Gory Trophy. Basically, Gory Trophy, it's really hard to estimate because, like we mentioned, in some cases, like Sun, Flicker, it doesn't apply at all. It doesn't do anything. In other cases are like, say, Glacier, because it's based on the amount of time on the screen before it spawns. And the main notable thing is it's really hard to estimate. Like, say you have a baby ball that passes through an enemy and is bouncing in the back line. There's a hidden stat called acceleration based on dexterity, or it uses a different calculation if you have rubber headband, but that stat still exists, acceleration. So it picks up speed every bounce up to a limit. Essentially, it's between one of the two lines. So, like for hemorrhage, it's between this line and this line. Say if you had like flash hemorrhage, or this line and this line rather. It might be easier to show them one at a time because it's kind of messy. So we'll do like this. So yeah, for hemorrhage, it's between one of these two values, depending on what you're fusing hemorrhage with. Like the top being the best case, and the bottom being like speed doesn't apply at all, like with Flicker. And then if we switch to baby balls, and then we'll go to more realistic values. Basically, we can see with speed, it also starts getting easier around NG plus 5, and that seems pretty accurate with like actually playing the game. Like it feels more trivial at NG20 than the first few NG levels. Like the biggest jump in difficulty is definitely the first few, and then it starts getting easier again, and you can pretty much push as far as you want to. And then there's still the second breakpoint when you cap crit, but you're still above the curve if you factor in speed, like the slope just changes. And then we'll look at all the other ones too. Yeah, special balls, even with speed, are terrible. The way Void Trophy works, like Assassin Cell is definitely good in the beginning, and it can still clear if you're using like Tactician, or they can just bounce indefinitely. But in terms of bossing, it's like extremely slow later. Because your damage of that combo is not increasing that much. Sorry, I'm coughing so much. The weather is like a snowstorm here. Alright, and then, like again, Wretched Onion doesn't scale with speed, Glacier doesn't scale with speed, some of the other AoE effects don't, but a lot do bounce and scale with speed. And so once again, we're seeing the same trend, like it starts becoming positive slightly later, but the same trend. And then if we, where it turns up, it starts becoming easier again. And then the last one would be status effects. And this one's a bit weird. In general, status effects fall off because the only one that really scales with speed is Curse. because you're proccing it more frequently. Voodoo Doll also works on certain bosses like Yeti Queen and the Shroom boss. But the others, status effects kind of fall off. Like one, they don't have very good damage. Like I can probably open that. If we look here, let's zoom in. Basically, this is all the damage values sorted, and this is assuming max stacks, which like you would have to hit 5 times with some of these status, or 8 times with some of these status effects to actually reach max stacks. And so you would multiply the AoE values by 5, and you can see the AoE values of like the good AoEs, like Nuke, Overgrowth, are already better than the status effects. And Phantom, like we mentioned, is like pretty much the only usable status later on, because it scales with status effect power, or it scales with speed rather, sorry. And then this Glacier, in the Switch version, it does not scale with status effect power on the Glacial Spike. So we can assume with the Regal update in January that will be removed unless that got reverted. And the passives, yeah, even though some of them actually have pretty good damage values, especially like Midnight Oil and Deadeye's Amulet, since this is applying to every baby ball. But you can't scale passive power outside of intelligence. Like it will update the tooltips, but it doesn't actually influence the damage right now. So I'm not sure if Heavenly Trophy gets fixed. And it could be the case where since Nintendo has a longer approval process, it ends up fixed in like Steam, Game Pass, PS5 version, but it's still broken in Switch version. We'll see. I don't know what will be in the update exactly. And then if we go back here, I think that's everything with speed. The only other thing we can show, let me put a couple more things back on here. We'll just do how do the different game versions change things? Basically, if it's the Switch version, you just subtract one character, or PS5 or Game Pass, since you don't have False Messiah. And what does that change exactly? It just means the point where you become positive is slightly later on if you have fewer characters, because you're getting less per NG plus cycle. And then, but you still are eventually becoming positive, and the point where you reach crit cap is also later on. And then what happens when we get the Regal update, assuming no other balance changes, then you do the opposite. It would just be like this. And the reason I switch numbers is at some point Radical won't clear, because like we mentioned, you get 1 or 2 shot, and Radical usually will take 1 or 2 shots of damage. I don't know where the Radical breakpoint actually is, since I hate using Radical. Maybe someone can find out. But yeah, basically it just moves, like the crit breakpoint moved further to the left, and the point where the game started getting easier again, and in G plus progression moved further to the left as well, but the general trends of everything still stay the same. So yeah, is there anything else? Oh, we can look at this. Basically, this is slightly inaccurate because the void values are wrong. But basically comparing the trophy to the stat, like crit, obviously the stat gives almost nothing, but then it gives dexterity, gives fire rate, acceleration, and something called the reload time, which it's like the only source of that stat. None of the trophies give it. So I still pump dexterity. And then everything else, like compared to leveling the buildings and farming resources or just grinding the trophies, it's pretty much always worth it to grind the trophies. Strength, I have the wrong calculation. It's actually worse, like significantly worse and closer to Shroom Trophy. Like I need to update this. But in general, you can level everything to 31 because it's cheap, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Like, you don't need the infinities at all. And you don't even need to do all the trophies, like only a couple of them are super important. And some are nice to have, like Desert Trophy and Boneyard can be okay too, but like you really only need two of them and then one additional one if you want to keep playing Sisyphus, but you could just drop him as a character if you wanted. Yeah, I think that's all.